Almost every society, both modern and ancient, has its own creation story that aims to explain where we came from and what our purpose in life is. In today's society, these ideas fit into two categories: the theory of evolution and the theory of intelligent design. Over Term 3, our Bible class looked at both of these arguments and intelligent design as the Christians view it. Over the course of this documentary, we will explore both ideas and discover, am I a man or a monkey? The first theory we will look at in this documentary is the theory of evolution. So what is evolution? Evolution is a theory that proposes that all life on Earth originated from the same first cells and evolved to all the different species we see today by means of random mutation and natural selection. But what is natural selection, you may ask? Well, natural selection is essentially survival of the fittest, by which I mean the organisms with the best traits reproduce and those with the weaker traits all die out. Now, when talking about evolution, it is important to understand the two different types: microevolution and macroevolution. Microevolution is small changes that occur in populations in a small time frame, whereas macroevolution is a large amount of mutations that have occurred over millions of years that have altered an organism so much that it is considered a new species. One of the common arguments of anti-evolutionists is to give them an example of macroevolution in the past 100 years. However, that is simply not what macroevolution is, making their point very invalid. Another common complaint that they have is that they simply don't think it's possible for an amount of tiny changes to make a whole new species. However, just look at the analogy of baking. In both sweet and savoury dishes, you often use eggs. And by adding small things that are different in each one, eventually it'll become a completely different thing. For example, you might start off with eggs and then add flour, but then in one you could add sugar, and another you could add milk, and you could end up with a casserole and a birthday cake. Both different foods, but they're still both started off with an egg. In class, we looked at Professor Jonathan Wells' criticism of 7 pillars of evolution. The pillars that he chose and his criticism of them were Miller and Urey's life in a bottle experiment, for having incorrect gases compared to what they were simulating, which was Earth at the time of the first signs of life. Haeckel's embryos for having inaccurate drawings compared to what the embryos actually look like. Darwin's Tree of Life drawing for disregarding the Cambrian explosion and for therefore being the wrong shape and misleading in the way that it presents evolution. The homology in vertebrate limbs for his belief that the argument suits the theory of intelligent design better. Peppered moths because they don't actually live on trees. Darwin's finches because that was used to show macroevolution in a pamphlet, but it doesn't. And ape to human artwork for saying that humans are animals. As you can see based on those, a lot of his criticism is based on these arguments not aligning with his own personal belief rather than facts, with the ones where he thinks that it suits a different argument better, or that he doesn't like that it shows that humans are animals, because that's not what he believes. Some of the other criticisms he have are simply based on the fact that science has evolved, and as the theory of evolution is a theory, it is bound to change over time. And as we grow with science, we go, that was actually very wrong. Some of his criticisms are valid, but overall, the fact that he could only find 7 things to criticize, and about half of them at least you can look at and just disregard based on the fact that the criticisms are unfair or unjust or just unreasonable criticisms. I don't think that his criticism really makes the theory of evolution as a whole any less believable, for me at least. The final theory we will look at in this mini documentary is the theory of intelligent design. So the theory of intelligent design is pretty much that humans and all life on Earth were created by some intelligent life form because life is too complex to have just appeared on its own. In class, we looked at this from the Christian perspective by looking at the Bible, and so the perspective on this theory that we were shown was that God created the world. And we've looked at Genesis and looked at different interpretations. So some people say that it was just the 7 days of creation. That's how it happened in 7 days. Other people are like, well, were the 7 days really days, or were they different time periods? Some people will look at it and say, well, this is just poetry. There's still a God, but it's not how life started. Lots of people interpret Genesis in different ways and believe in intelligent design as the theory that they pick for how life appeared on Earth. There are lots of criticisms on this theory based on the fact that, despite what you may hear from some people, it is mostly based on different religions around the world, at least nowadays. So there isn't a lot of scientific evidence to show that it was created by some almighty power that we can't see. And there is a lot more evidence that we can see to show that it was evolution and that we all started as one thing, and based on a lot of changes that occurred over millions and millions of years, like a long time, we all became the different species that we are today. After looking at this in class, my initial belief hasn't changed, and I still believe that evolution is the most fitting theory that answers the most questions and is the most probable explanation for how life appeared on Earth. However, looking at it in class has taught me more about my own side of the argument, and I have learnt more about evolution than what I knew before. Now it is time for you to decide. Are you a man or a monkey?